everybody. This is the story Frogs by Gail Gibbons. This is more of a book about telling the life cycle of a frog. It is springtime at a pond. A jelly-like cluster of eggs floats among the water weeds at the pond's surface. These eggs are the beginning of frogs. A breeze ripples the surface. The floating clump of eggs is called frog spawn. Frogs lay their eggs in water or wet places. Otherwise, the eggs could dry up and die. These eggs do not have shells. They are inside jelly-like coverings, and as they float, the jelly lets the sun warmth come through to the eggs inside. Not all the eggs will survive. Most of the time, the large and slimy mass of eggs is too slippery and too big to be eaten. This is nature's way of protecting them, but some of the smaller clusters of eggs will be eaten by creatures living in or near the pond. The dark centers of the eggs slowly grow into frog embryos. The embryos grow until they look like small tadpoles. Tadpoles are frog babies, and as they grow, they feed off their own egg yolks. So they're inside the eggs. See, they're growing a little tail. The tadpoles grow until they are big enough to break free into the water. It can take from 3 days to 3 weeks for this to happen, depending on what kind of frogs they will become. So here's the little tadpole coming out of the egg. One by one, the tadpoles hatch from their eggs. They each have a head, tail, and body. The tadpoles wiggle their tails to swim. And here you can see the body, the head, the tail, and here are the gills where they breathe. And here's algae that they like to eat. The tadpoles breathe by getting air from the water through feathery outside gills. As they swim, they eat very small plants that stick to larger water plants. These tiny plants are called algae. 1 week later, the tadpoles look different. They are bigger. Their gills begin to shrink and a flap of skin slowly grows over them. The tadpole mouths become hard with their tiny teeth and their upper jaws. Now the tadpoles are 1 month old. Their outside gills have disappeared. New gills inside the tadpoles take oxygen from the water. Their tails are wider for stronger swimming, and something wonderful begins to happen. At the base of their tails, bulges appear. This is where their hind front frog legs are growing. So here's the bulge. That's the hind means their back legs. At 2 months old, the tadpoles dart about the pond as they eat. They are still vegetarians. They only eat plant life, and the tadpoles are getting bigger. Now they have their hind legs. Behind their heads, bulges appear where their front legs are growing. So here's the little bulge where their front leg is going to grow, and here's their hind legs. Their tails become smaller. The tadpoles' gills inside their bodies are gone. They have grown lungs to use for breathing. Now and then they wiggle to the surface to breathe in some air. See how they're growing? So now they're underwater so far for 3 months. The tadpoles are about 3 months old. Again, they look different. They have front legs. Their tails are even smaller. They have shed their tadpole's skin and lips at last. They have the wide mouth of frogs. See, he's starting to really look like a frog. The tadpoles have become tiny frogs. They climb out of the pond and onto the land. Their tails will become smaller and smaller until they finally disappear. The tiny frogs begin to eat insects and worms, and they aren't vegetarians anymore. Frogs are amphibians. The word amphibian comes from a Greek word that means 2 lives. An amphibian can live on land or in the water. Frogs are cold-blooded. That means their inside body temperatures are about the same as the outside temperature. During the next few years, the tiny frogs will grow to be mature frogs. That means grown-ups. Then they will be able to make their own frog spawn, and there will be new baby frogs. Frogs have many body parts. Here's a sticky tongue. And frogs don't hunt for food. Their big eyes are on top of their heads so they can see all the way around. They stay very still, and when something flies or crawls nearby, Their long, sticky tongue darts out to catch it, and they swallow their food whole. Frogs that swim using their hind legs, their back legs, and web feet to push them through the water. Frogs have 2 sets of eyelids. One set is transparent. That means they can see through them. And while frogs dive, they close their eyelids to protect their eyes. On land, the frogs hop about. They use their very strong hind legs to leap. Most frogs can jump 10 times their body length. They are wonderful jumpers. And that's an activity you guys can do at home. Practice like you're hopping like you're a frog. And frogs have enemies. Foxes, snakes, rats, birds, and other creatures eat frogs when they can catch them. A sudden leap is a quick escape from danger. For protection, some frogs have skin glands that make them taste bad or make them poisonous. Sometimes their skin color hides them from enemies. That is called camouflage. Croak. Frogs make different sounds. Often male frogs call their mates this way. That's how they try to get their girlfriends. They pull air into the sacs at their throats, and then it expands, which means grows bigger, like this. And then when frogs force the air out of their air sacs and into the lungs, the air passes and makes really cool vibrating sounds. Sometimes frogs are very loud, especially if you live near a pond. When it's cold, the frogs go to sleep. Sometimes they find sheltered hollows. Other frogs dig into the muddy bottom of a pond. All winter, they sleep covered with mud, and they stay completely motionless. This is called hibernation. And in the springtime, which is now, when the sun begins to warm up the ground and the pond's water, the frogs come out of hibernation, and they are healthy and hungry. Okay, I'm going to end there. Here's a frog. The difference between a frog and a toad. You guys can look at that. Bye, everybody.